Brian, we have a lot to talk about since our last show. We were recapping the early signing period. Since then, the transfer portal is open for business. Travis Hunter is officially a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. And you were just watching a press conference with Deion Figures getting inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exciting for him. He's the latest member of the College Football Hall of Fame from Colorado, and obviously the Thorpe Award winner. Back in '92, I think he won it. And he obviously had a big role, and he had the interception that sealed the championship in 1990. And I was chatting with Rick George recently. Had a couple stories come out with that, but one of the things Rick told me is we were talking about Travis, and he said, up until Travis got here. Deion Figures, I think, was the best cornerback I'd ever, seen, and recruited. And then Travis got here. He's a little bit different. So, but Deion Figures, to Rick, Deion Figures and Travis are the two, premier corners that he's seen, especially at Colorado. But yeah, so it's fitting that on a week that Travis, we think might win the Heisman, that Deion Figures is also being honored.
I think if I was going to list 10 guys that played at CU before I started watching or covering Colorado football, Deion Figures would be on that top 10 list, I think. I would have enjoyed
Yeah.
watching him play cornerback at this level. And that kind of segues us, Brian, to the fact that Travis Hunter is not a finalist for the Thorpe Award, but he's got a lot of other hardware that he's got a chance to bring home this month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still, you have to be appreciative of all the things that he could win and that he's a finalist for. But the fact that he's not a finalist for the Thorpe is still mind-boggling.
Yeah.
This is arguably the best corner in the country. But yeah, he did. As we're doing this on Tuesday, on Monday, he took home the Lot Impact Trophy, which is one of the three top Defensive Player of the Year awards. It's been awarded for the last 20 years, and the Bednarik and the Nagurski are the three Defensive Player of the Year awards. So he's apparently in their minds the top defensive player period in the country, but not one of the top three corners according to the Thorpe people. So, but yeah, very deserving for Travis. And it's funny that I put this out there like here's a guy that's a finalist for the Bolitnikoff Award as the top receiver in the country who just won Defensive Player of the Year. That's insane. To even say that, it sounds like, wait, what are you talking about?
We're both flying out to New York very early on Thursday to go cover this event. And I mentioned, I think, on our last analysis video, just saying thank you, Travis, for allowing us this opportunity because being able to justify going out to New York, I think really one of the best times a year to go out there with just the holiday season in full swing out there. Uh, it's going to be a fun event. It's going to be, I don't quite know how much access we're going to get. It sounds like before and after the television show, we'll have access at the team hotel, which we're both going to stay at
Yeah.
for that event. Well, what are your expectations going out to New York later this week? We're both going to be getting up. What is it like? Probably 3 a.m. on Thursday
Yeah.
morning.
Both of our flights are around, we're on different flights, but around 6 a.m. Mine's at 6. I think yours is 6:15 or so, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so it's an early day, but I don't know what to expect. I mean, I reached out to, an Oregon writer that I know that, obviously was out there last year for Bo Nix, because he was a finalist. And I said, well, what's this like? And, media can't actually be in the room for the ceremony. We're actually not even in the same building. I mean, we're going to be watching it on TV with everybody else in a hotel about 20 blocks away or so. But my understanding is we get the results of the voting before everybody, so that's good. But it looks like there's some a media event with the finalists on Friday, and then a press conference on Saturday before, and then they bring us the winner afterwards. So uh, which I think will be Travis. So there could be three opportunities to talk to Travis this weekend. And Shador obviously not an official, not officially there as a candidate or as a finalist, but we know Shador is going to be there as well, and Coach Prime should be out there as well to support Travis. And so I'm curious to see what we get. As far as Travis goes, I think it's going to be pretty limited. From what I understand, like it's all run through the Heisman, like those people, and they keep it pretty. Um, tight, with everybody. So it'll be interesting. I'm not sure what to expect other than I am looking forward to covering it for the first time ever, and being out in New York, like you said, at Christmas time. I mean, you can't. I'm not a big city guy, but if you're going to see New York City, I think Christmas time is kind of the cool time to see it.
We probably won't be taking a carriage ride through Central Park together, huh?
I'm fine with it. I don't. I mean, your wife is going, so I don't know if she would like that,
She
but
could be there to document it. She's going to photograph it.
yeah,
It'll be a fun time.
if she wants to sit on the
So
other side of the carriage and take photos, that's fine. Yeah, but I'm all for it.
we were talking before we hit record, Brian, that Shador Sanders could be, without question, a Heisman candidate this season. But I think the school did the right thing in terms of promoting Travis because, frankly, you didn't want to split the vote there. And I felt like if both of those guys were publicly kind of campaigning for this thing, that would have been hard for either of them to win.
Right.
But it's more, I guess, appreciation to Shador for basically saying, you know what, I understand what Travis Hunter is doing is special. It hasn't been done before in college football, at least in this modern era.
Yeah.
Let me just take a step back and focus on helping us win games. And he did that, 9 wins, the most for CU in the regular season since 2016. And uh, there's a lot to applaud in terms of the way that Shador and Travis went about this whole Heisman campaign.
Yeah, I think so. And it's clear to everybody, and I think it's clear to Shador and Coach Prime has said it too, that Travis Hunter is the best player in college football. And I think every time Shador was asked about it, he was very matter of fact in saying, "Look, Travis Hunter should win it. He's the best player." Um, I think you could definitely argue and say that Shador Sanders was the most valuable player to Colorado, but that Travis Hunter was the best player on the team. I think that's fair to say that. And to me, the Heisman Trophy is not most valuable player. It goes to the most outstanding player, and I think that's Travis Hunter. And I know a lot of people have been upset that Shador was not invited as a finalist, and but look, he could still be top five. And I was telling you beforehand, doing all the research over the previous 89 years of Heisman, it's very rare that a three-loss team has two guys, serious candidates. And there's never been a three-loss team that's had two players top five in the voting. And we don't know where Shador lands. He could still be five. We just know he's not top four. But if he's top five, CU can make some history by being the first three-loss team to do that. And so the reality is that Heisman voters, they want their quarterbacks to be highly ranked and not have very many losses. And, Jaden Daniels, I think, is an exception from last year, but he also didn't have Travis Hunter on his team, but Dylan Gabriel being there makes sense because he's the quarterback for the number one undefeated team in the country. And Cam Ward, I think, has elevated Miami more than any quarterback outside of Shador, but he also didn't have Travis with him. So I don't think you can argue against any of the four that are there. I think CU fans just would have loved to have seen Shador.
Yeah. And it'll be great that he comes out there, especially with the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award already in tow.
Yeah.
This is somebody that was also the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. So, it's a celebration of what those guys did in terms of transforming this Colorado program that was really down a couple years ago. And so this is all really fun. And then we book our travel to San Antonio for the Alamo Bowl. And I know you're traveling out early on Christmas week. I'm going to be traveling out on Christmas Eve. Uh, there was some initial disappointment, partly because it's a bowl game that Colorado's been to the previous two bowl appearances,
Yeah.
and those did not go well. And also partly because it's a conference rival. You kind of want this exotic, different team to play, and they're not going to have that. They're going to have BYU, even though they didn't play them in the regular season. It still kind of just feels a little bit more, I don't know, forced
Yeah.
because this is, not a Big 12 bowl of situation for Colorado. How do you feel about all of that as the Buffaloes travel out to San Antonio?
Yeah, and I certainly understand some of the fans' frustration, and I know there's people even at CU that would have loved to have been in San Diego, because they've been to San Antonio, they've done this with this bowl game in recent years. I mean, the only two bowl games I've covered with CU are the Alamo, and so I wanted San Diego. I wanted something different. Holiday. We're saying San Diego because Holiday would have been that next choice, but and fans they were dreaming of a CU versus Miami, a Shador versus Cam Ward bowl game. But even if CU had gone to the Holiday, Miami probably would have been taken by the Pop Tarts Bowl anyway. And so I'm not sure there was a reality of that. But the way I look at it, Adam, is in the vacuum of this season, you have to look at it that way and say, this is a really good bowl game for the Buffs. They're 9-3. They didn't get to the Big 12 title game. I mean, they had their shot and they fumbled it, and as Coach Prime said, and 9-3 going to the Alamo Bowl. That's one of the best bowls outside of the CFP. And you're facing a team that's a number 17 team. Take logos and everything out of it. You're facing a number 17 team. You have a shot to go get win number 10 and beat a top 20 team in that last game. It's one of only three top 25 games outside of the CFP. And I know it's a conference opponent, but they have not seen BYU in 36 years. I mean, I tweeted out the other day, the last time they played, Bill McCartney and Lavelle Edwards were the coaches, and Sal Inessi and Ty Detmer, who was a freshman, were the starting quarterbacks. So, that's been a while. When you put those names in there, that puts it in context for longtime fans. Like, ooh, okay, it's been a very long time since they've played BYU.
The initial BYU versus CU matchup, where you found the newspaper article, that was even more epic.
Yeah, especially because of the way CU runs its offense, right? When it says the Boulder team use almost exclusively forward passes, and that's what CU's done a lot of this year. So it kind of made me laugh a little bit. But Buff fans would love if that result was the same. I think it was 41-0 Buffs in that game back in 1934 or whatever it was.
I think I'm going to have to pick Colorado to win this football game. We'll get into our score predictions later, but
Yeah.
Colorado's definitely been trending in a different direction. And it does, it kind of trickles down from Coach Prime of like the importance of winning this final game. And I think that this is going to be a pretty motivated Buffs team when they kick that football off.
I would think so. Bowl games are so tricky because you don't know what team is going to show up. Because it's been a month since they've played, and that time off I think can be tricky. I mean, we saw that really work against, and there was a lot of things going on in 2016, but we saw that work against that Buffs team in 2016. And we've seen it work against other teams in the past. So I'm curious to see what you get on both sides. I mean, Kalani Sitake, the BYU head coach, was talking very much the other day about they're just excited to be there, and regardless of the result, they're excited for the opportunity to go down there. And you got to think for BYU for a very long time they were trying to get into a power conference, and they finally got into one last year, and they were always that team that even when they were 11-1 or whatever would get sent to the New Mexico Bowl or whatever. And so this is one of the biggest bowls BYU's ever been to, and so I think that for them it's a pretty exciting thing. And so uh CU fans, I mean CU the team needs to know that and probably realize this team might be BYU is either going to be really motivated because of that, or they're going to be really kind of like, all right, we made it, and you don't know which team you're going to get. And so, CU, I think, could be motivated. I don't know.
Transfer portal madness began yesterday, and actually some of the news started to trickle out a little bit before that.
Yeah,
Brian, let's start with the guys that are leaving CU's program as we record this. Right now it's 11:31 Tuesday, December 10th. This stuff is going to continue to trickle out in the coming weeks. Quarterback Walter Taylor, wide receiver Cordell Russell, wide receiver Jordan Onavu, wide receiver Assad Wasim, tight end Morgan Pearson, offensive lineman Yukari Walker, offensive lineman Peyton Kirkland, defensive lineman Rayon Buell, edge Deion Hayes, linebacker Jeremiah Brown, linebacker Johnny Cheney Jr., and just as before we hit record here, Tyler Johnson, not a surprise there at all, is going to hit the portal, an offensive lineman as well.
yeah,
Any guys surprise you? I would say Tyler Johnson a year ago would have surprised me,
yeah.
but that was the biggest kind of head scratcher in terms of guy that didn't make an impact this past season. But you know, these guys that are leaving did not have a significant role on the team in 2024.
Other than Deion Hayes, that to
Deion
me,
Hayes. Yeah,
with
yeah,
a
yeah.
guy having a year of eligibility, I'm a little surprised on him because I mean he was CU's sack leader at the time he got injured, and I mean he was really. I know the Bucs ended up with a lot of sacks, but for those who forgot, the first 3-4 games they didn't have any sacks other than Deion Hayes, and he was the only one getting sacks, and so I'm surprised with him because it seemed like he was obviously a starter and playing a lot before he got hurt. I do. As soon as I saw that, I thought, "Uh-oh, what does that mean for Sam Okunlola?" Because those guys were pretty close. They came here together from Pitt. Does Sam Okunlola stay here? And he obviously was a big key as well. So that was probably the biggest surprise to me. I mean, but Tyler Johnson, Johnny Chaney, Yakiri Walker, those are guys that left the team during the season, so that's not a surprise. Um, the only other surprise to me was maybe Jeremiah Brown because I thought that he might have stayed. That was one that it was tricky to know what was going to happen there because it's like, does he just not see a role this year? He's going to stay here and stay with his coaching staff he loves and give it another go next year. But looks like he's wants to maybe he sees a better opportunity elsewhere. So that would maybe surprise me a little bit. And then the only other one was I don't know if it was a surprise, but I'm disappointed to see Cordell Russell go because he was a guy that I was looking forward to seeing. He was just never healthy enough to make an impact this year, but he was a guy that I was looking forward to seeing play at some point.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think there's some of these guys that you would have liked to have back in the program, but I don't think there's anybody you can't replace. And
Yeah, I agree.
Jeremiah Brano was the one that kind of pulled at your heartstrings a little bit because you knew the journey he had been on with Coach
Mhm.
Prime at Jackson State, and he came in and he was always kind of this team first guy, and then he redshirts, and you're thinking, okay, maybe he's just kind of gearing up for this last hurrah with the Buffaloes. But on the other hand, it also makes sense, right? He would have to be a backup being projected
Yeah,
into the 2025 season. And if it's your last year, you should go somewhere where you can actually start, right?
yeah, I think so. And I'll be curious to see where he ends up. I mean, he was obviously a very productive player at Jackson State, and the head coach there is a guy that was with the staff before. So, is that a spot that he goes back to, or does he go somewhere else? So, um, uh, he's a good player, but it's never fully clicked. And Coach Prime talked about it. That first year he was here, he was kind of bouncing around, didn't really know what kind of where he wanted to be, whether he was edge, inside, whatever. He kind of settled into that role, but you had Nikai Hill Green and Levante Bentley playing so well that you just couldn't get on the field. And so, yeah, that's a tough one because we got to know Jeremiah a little bit through Well Off and Reach the People Media because he was very much featured on those channels, especially last year. So yeah, I think Buff fans that might be the one. The Buff fans are like, oh man, we got to know JB a little bit, and now he's gone.
Brian Buell, too, I think could have provided
Yeah.
help to this
Mhm.
defensive line rotation this coming season. I don't know what transpired in terms of him not getting back on the field, uh, but he was kind of a versatile piece. But again, I put this out on Twitter yesterday, Brian. Like, if you view yourself as a starter and you're projected as a backup, it's better
Mhm.
for your locker room for that player to move on. Like, I
Right.
don't think you want a bunch of people in that locker room thinking they should be starters instead of knowing their role. And it was pretty special, I felt, the way this year's team kind of adopted that role generally. There were a few guys like Johnny Chaney Jr. and Tyler Johnson that left the team midseason, but it was a lot of guys that were okay. If I'm Travis Jay, I'm not going to play safety, so I'm going to rip somebody's head off on
Yeah.
kickoff coverage. And there was
Brendan
kind
Gant.
of Brendan Gant. There was kind of
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
buy-in from guys, and you hope that is the case again in 2025. Uh, but you don't want to harbor a locker room that is wishing they were more, right?
Yeah. Well, especially, yeah, Rayon Buell is a good example of that because he was such a dominant key player for Ohio's defense, and probably played most of the snaps. And then you come here and you look forward and project and think, all right, I could be a rotational piece, but that's not what I was. And I don't want to be a rotational piece. And there's a role for that. And you can you can certainly play well and shine in that. But you're right. I mean, I think there are guys that, if you look at it, say, well, you can be a very key rotational player, or you can go somewhere else and be the guy that plays a defensive line. What 75% of the snaps would be
Mhm.
a high number. So he probably projects himself as that, and he could be that somewhere else. So I don't blame a guy like Rayon Buell for moving on.
So we have experienced the last four transfer windows with Coach Prime, the fact that they are going to get better.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question. And so you start looking at names that are coming through the portal right now. And is there any guy that stands out to you? There's a few that I'd like to talk about, but I'm curious if there's any, that jump off the page to you in terms of potential incoming guys.
Well, before I answer that, I want to ask you that how will we judge whether this team gets better or not on this transfer window? Because when you lose Shador and Travis, and some of the guys are losing, I think you're naturally going to take a step back. And so I think you almost need to grade it on a different scale and say, are they better from what we know they won't have anyway? You know what I mean? And so I think they've gotten better because they've had Shador, Travis, Shiloh, those guys around, and they've built around them. I do think you got to get graded on a different scale because I don't know if you can automatically. Not saying they can't get better next year, they can't be a 10-win team, 11-win team, but I think you're when you lose what we were talking about is two Heisman candidates, you're naturally going to see a step back. So I think there's a different scale of saying it of how they get better. So how would you
Yeah,
grade it?
no. I'm glad you mentioned that, Brian, because you just throw Travis Hunter out there, and this is something that Coach Prime alluded to in a press conference about a month ago. Of like, it takes two five-star transfers,
Yeah,
five-star like elite transfers to replace what he does on both sides of the ball. So yeah, and that is a huge challenge for them. It will always be this way in terms of winning the trenches because I think skill talent wise,
yeah,
Colorado is going to be fine. If you have quarterback in the trenches lined up through portal additions in this new era of Colorado football,
yeah,
I think you're going to be able to contend for Big 12 championships. But that is easier said than done. And in quarterback, we know that Julian Lewis is coming in, and we also know that they're looking at Liberty's quarterback. That's going to be. It sounds like taking a visit to Colorado as well. Caden Salter, who is a dual threat guy. In watching that Carrollton semifinal game, I mean, they were just straight up zone read most of that game, right?
yeah. Yeah, I
So
didn't watch a whole lot of it, but I saw some of the highlights.
they might kind of change a little bit of their offensive philosophy based on
Yeah,
quarterback going forward and having a guy that can move the chains with his legs. I know that Julian is more of a he wants to dissect teams from the pocket if necessary, but his offensive system there in high school at Carrollton should kind of suit him for that as well.
yeah. Real quick, I was looking up. So Travis just won the Lot Impact Trophy. Looking, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan wins it in 21, right? He's a Blitnikoff finalist. Tetro McMillan is a finalist as well. So basically, to replace Travis, you need an Aiden Hutchinson and a Tetro McMillan. So I'm just throwing that out there. But um, as far as players to watch, I mean, the one interesting one you mentioned some good ones, but to me, I'm looking at Caleb Odom, the Alabama receiver who was Juju's teammate just a couple of years ago, and I saw somewhere somebody had these numbers, but a lot of Juju's touchdown passes the previous 2 years went to Caleb Odom, and
Yeah.
so you know that could be one, and he's visiting Colorado. Is it this weekend?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
6'5", 227 pound wide receiver. I mean, that's a big body. So that's a guy that, once I saw all that, you see all the dots, and I'm like, okay, that's a guy I want. When you're looking at replacing four outgoing receivers, that's the type of guy. You love Mario Miller coming back, Draylon Miller. I think there's a lot of talent coming back, but I think Caleb Odom is one guy that I would put near the top of my wish list, as well as some of the other guys you mentioned. But I think Caleb Odom is maybe near the top for me.
Jaheim Otis from Alabama too is another guy that stands out.
Yeah. Hmm.
He's already a blue chip transfer on 24/7 Sports. He's going to be coming out to visit the Buffs this weekend as well. Six
5-star
five,
defensive lineman, right?
yeah,
Coming out
six
of high school.
five,
Yeah.
three hundred
Hmm.
and 25 pounds. Played a lot of snaps with the Crimson Tide, a lot of pressures.
Hmm.
Could be a real big impact on that defensive line. And Reginald Hughes from Jackson State is kind of a guy that intrigues me a little bit. He was uh, a guy that went to the JUCO route, played 12 games at Ole Miss, goes to Jackson State, 6'2", 240, had 83 tackles at Jackson State this past season. His path kind of reminds me a little bit of Nekai Hill Green as a linebacker, and
Yeah.
obviously that's a guy that they need to replace on defense. And then safety Tawfiq Bayard from USF. He's set to visit the Buffs this weekend as well. A 6'1", 197-pound safety that graded out really well. The best among USF's safeties this past season's got 3 years of eligibility left. So these names are just starting to trickle in now as we record this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be really hard to replace Shador and Travis, but this program has got the right head coach at the helm in terms of trying to fill those gaps.
Yeah. And look, to put it in shopping terms, as Coach Prime has done in the past a little bit, the shelf is going to get stocked with more things you can go look at and try to pick up his transfers. So yeah, there's some names trickling in, but that wish list might change even as more names come in and
Yeah.
things like that. I am curious your thoughts on the Buffs adding a transfer quarterback and what that would do when you're already you're bringing in Juju Lewis. I mean, can you see the Buffs adding a transfer quarterback? Do you see even a situation where they can sell it to Juju and say, you're a really young player. You're going to be 17 years old next year. This would be a really good developmental year for you to sit behind this talented transfer we're bringing in. And then you got 4 years after that. Do you see a situation like that? Or, how do you think that could work?
It's a tough question because I think that Julian Lewis, even though he's really, really young, could come in, go through some growing pains, and by the end of next season, be really, really good and
Yeah.
be like kind of like catapulting this program to the heights that Buffs fans want to see this program elevated to in the coming years. But you've got to go through some of those growing pains, right?
Yeah. I
That
would think
just
so.
isn't that just isn't going to happen without some of that at this level. And I loved what I saw from Julian Lewis going against Buford's defense in that semifinal game. I know he didn't have huge stats, but this is a Buford defense that gave up over the course of the last two seasons less than 10 points per game. So
Yeah.
they're as close to an FBS defense as you're going to face in high school. And he's really good. It just like, do you want to try to win 10, 11, 12 games in 2025?
Yeah.
If that's the case, a transfer quarterback's going to be in a better position to put you there. So I don't know what Colorado's going to plan to do there. I there was maybe this is hate coming from USC, but the whole mentality out of them was that, yeah, the reason he's going to Colorado is because Colorado told Juju they're not going to take a transfer quarterback. And that kind of made me scratch my head because hey, Coach Prime's not like this patient guy that wants to wait for 3, 4 years to
Yeah.
get back to where they are right now.
Right.
They want to build off being 9-3. And how do you do that? Usually there's experience at the quarterback position, but it's just hard to answer that question, Brian, because I really have such high expectations for Julian Lewis. But we've covered this college football deal for a minute now, and quarterbacks have to learn. They got to get that
Yeah.
timing down. It's like our oldest got his driver's license a few months ago, and it's like that timing of things, like it just has to come together, and there's really
Mhm.
no way to cheat that process, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure there's cases, and I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but like generally true freshman quarterbacks do not come in and dominate right away. And
Trevor
major
Lawrence
college
is like
football.
the one guy that I think
Yeah.
kind of did that. But yeah, that's the exception, not the norm.
Like I'm trying to think, and especially him graduating early. I mean, he's not only a true freshman; he should be a high school senior next year. The only one I can think of in recent memory was, oh my gosh, he went to USC. Daniels a few years ago. What was his first name? Do you remember?
I'm blanking on it.
He ended up going. He played for like four or five different schools in the end. Remember, he got injured
He
like
went
the
to West
first
Virginia, and yeah.
Rice.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but he was pretty solid his freshman year. I can't remember his first name. It's bothering me. But I think he started as a true freshman and was solid. Um, got injured like the opener in his sophomore year, and Keaton.
JT Daniels.
Yeah,
JT
JT
Daniels.
Daniels. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then Keaton Slovis took over. Remember that? And so then JT Daniels transferred, but um, yeah, he was the only one I can remember that like was an early graduate and took over right away. Um, trying to think here. I'm looking here. Okay, 2018, true freshman year. This was a 5-star from modern day. Remember, he was highly. I mean, he was Julian Lewis back then. He completed 59.5% of his passes, 2672 yards, 14 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and was sacked 25 times, negative 149 yards rushing. So even he, was a 5-star and didn't like kill it that first year. I'm not saying that uh, Julian Lewis can't, but it's tough. I think, and that quarterback room is going to be interesting to watch because quarterbacks, I think, more than other spots, more than other positions, are apt to move in the offseason because they all want to start and there's only one that can't start. And so we've already seen Walter Taylor is going to go in the portal. What happens with Destin Wade? Ryan Staub stuck it out last year, but does Ryan Staub want to stay again when it looks like he's going to be passed over again? So um, maybe he will. I don't know, but if you lose all your backups too, you have to bring in transfers, and you don't want to just bring in transfers that are going to sit the bench. You're going to want to bring in a transfer that wants to compete. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. You either have to bring in transfers or sign another true freshman, which I don't see them doing. I mean, I don't see them taking two true freshman quarterbacks. Do you?
No, no, no. I that would probably not be cool with Julian Lewis's camp. Like
No.
he's got an opportunity to come in and battle. And yeah, I hope that it doesn't throw him off if they bring in a talented transfer because if anything, I think this coach, the staff has shown that like we are handing this program off to you, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we also got to win football games in the meantime. If you can do that, you'll be the starting quarterback in Boulder. You need more development, I think having a little bit of security, some insurance that at that position would be big.
Yeah.
I mean, how nervous have Buff fans been the last couple of years? And not anything against Ryan Staub. He showed to be very serviceable in that Utah game, but like you knew there was going to be a drop off if Shador ever let one of those hits to him, those many hits that he took,
Right.
drop him out. And then, we were out in Pullman in 2023 and Gavin Cold, how many passes did he throw before he caught his own pass and just got drilled and then he got replaced? So you don't
Yeah.
want to get back to that place. You don't want to get back to even like what CU fans experienced the year before in 2022 with JT Shrout and Brennan Lewis, who is back in the portal now
I
after
was just gonna
being
say that.
at Nevada for a couple years. Like you got to avoid being in that quarterback void. That was a sad place, Brian.
Yes, it was. And you know, you have to give credit. I know it was a very short year. I know he was injured and didn't finish the way he wanted to, but you have to give credit for Sam Neuer, the way he played in 2020.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and so I'm gonna put him in that good category, but that it was kind of an abyss between Sam Neuer and Shador Sanders. That yeah, 2021, 2022. That was just. I remember after 2021, you and I saying there's no way the quarterback play can get worse. And then it did. And we're like, oh boy, that's really bad.
Yeah,
And credit to Owen McCown because he
yeah.
did a good job. But he got injured too that year and didn't play a ton. And he's actually doing a really nice job at um, UTSA, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So,
I've been
um,
actually a big fan of his when I tune
yeah,
in. He
yeah,
he
for
was a
sure.
fun quarterback to watch.
And I'm not surprised that he's doing well, and
Yeah, yeah.
um, so, so yeah. But I think too that if you don't bring in a transfer quarterback that can compete for the starting job, I think you're doing a disservice to the team and to Buff fans by just saying, yeah, we're going to bring in guys that are just bodies to sit behind Julian Lewis. You can't do that. I think you have to bring in guys that are going to push Julian Lewis, and uh, I think that's the best thing for the team. And I would think that Julian, I don't know him, but I would think that Julian Lewis would embrace that and say, I'm a competitor. I want somebody that's going to push me and make me better. And because if he comes in and it's just handed to him, there's sometimes human nature takes over. You don't work as hard, when you think you've got the job, no matter what. So I think if I'm Julian Lewis, I'm excited about it and say, yeah, bring in somebody, let's compete.
And if Julian Lewis is the best quarterback on the roster,
Then he
there's
should
no
start.
question,
Yeah.
Brian, he
Mhm.
will start. That's one thing that I think is a misnomer with this staff is that they play favorites because, yeah, Coach Prime loves his sons. Like, who
Yeah.
wouldn't want to talk about their sons if you were coaching them
Right.
in a very glowing light? And people, I think, partly because of kind of the Dan Hawkins debacle that there was, and Mike McIntyre recruited his son, and I always thought J Mac was a really valuable piece to the team, but
Yeah.
there's a kind of this past with coaches and their sons. And that's the only place any of that hate could come towards Coach Prime because what he's done since he got to Colorado is ask these players if you work hard, if you show up, if you put in the requisite film hours and go above and beyond, you will get on the field. And we've seen that at every position with this staff. And even a Cormani McLean comes in with 5 stars, and you might want to tailor things to get him on the field and make him feel comfortable. But he was not putting in that work, and this staff was not willing to coddle them. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. Like with Julian Lewis, it's like if you are the best quarterback in this roster, you're going to start. That's been kind of a clear issue set forth with the staff in terms of
Yep.
like they are not looking to not put the best players on the field.
Yeah. I agree with you. And like I said, I don't know Julian, but what I've seen of him is that he would embrace that, and it does seem like he has a good work ethic and will come in and compete for it. But yeah, it to me, if Julian Lewis is the best quarterback after everything's settled and he's a starter, he should be. But I do think it'd be a disservice if he didn't bring somebody in to compete for him. And so um, if I'm Buff fans, I'm looking at some of these veteran quarterbacks that only have a year or two left, and I personally believe that even no matter how good Julian is now, if he's tremendous and he's one of the best quarterbacks around, you want him to start. But I personally believe that one of the best things for this program is to go get one of those veteran guys that has a year left, that has proven it, and go let him play for a year. Let Julian sit behind him and develop his body, because again, he's a high school junior right now. There's probably some physical development he has to do, and I would love to see them do something like that, where he's got a year where he develops his body. Owen McCown, I was surprised he was even ready to play that year in 2022
Yeah.
because he just didn't look physically ready to go. And so I know he's different than Julian Lewis, but those freshmen need that time. And so that's what I would love to see from CU. I just think it's kind of a tricky situation. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that.
Yeah, no question. Well, the transfer portal window is going to be open for a few more weeks. Brian, I'm sure we're going to be catching up a ton in the meantime. We got to do a analysis video on Times Square, I think,
Yeah.
in New York this week. We'll probably get some crazies trying to interrupt, but maybe that will just add to the entertainment value.
Well, and hey, we got to do it from the carriage with Liz filming it, right? If
You
we can get an
know,
analysis video from a carriage with Liz filming it, that would make my New York trip complete.
how about this, Brian? We're gonna roll through Central Park. You get 5 questions, three CU related, two non-CU related questions. I'll do the same, and we'll get that content out there to the masses.
Now, is that asking each other, or are
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah,
asking
yeah.
random people?
No, you. I'm going to
Okay.
ask you 5 questions.
All right. Well, not today, right?
No, no, no. When we're on the
Okay. Okay.
carriage out
Okay.
in
Oh, on the
Central
carriage, on the
Park.
carriage. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm good with that. Yeah.
You got to do it for the content, as the
Hey,
kids
it's
say.
all for the content. That's right. And so I'm excited for this weekend because I think there's going to be some fun content that each of us have on our platforms that uh, I'm just excited for what the Heisman ceremony is going to be like. And, we've seen the Heisman Trophy. Rashawn's has been there in that
Yeah,
Legacy Hall
yeah,
for a long time. And, but it's felt lonely, right? It needs a friend, and so I think that this is a time, and it's perfect year too, 30th anniversary of Rashawn's, and so I'm excited to see a brand new Heisman Trophy this weekend, and one that should be on its way to Boulder, in my opinion.
yeah. We should spend a little time talking about Rashawn too when we're out in New York because
Yeah,
he used to live by me, and obviously he met a tragic ending. But I have a lot of positive words to speak on Rashawn Salam, and like you said, that trophy has been lonely in that hallway, and I think all signs point towards us being able to have a celebratory CU post Heisman Trophy ceremony situation analysis video out in New York. So, Brian, I appreciate you, and I'm going to see you out in New York City.
awesome. We'll see you there. Safe travels.
Okay, thanks. You too.